Very good. I think we'll get started. I'm sure there will be still a few people joining in the next few minutes. But yeah, I think let's use the time. A couple of us already here. And yeah, this is a special meeting today, the Mindful Tech Leaders. I'm really happy to have Deepa here talking about the topic of innovation, which is one of my yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite topics, as I really like to enjoy using creativity at work and all the cool stuff you can do with it. And therefore, yeah, this is a really cool topic. And also, thanks everyone here joining now. Some of you may be here the first time. We have this bi-weekly Mindful Tech Leader meeting. It's basically happening twice a month. It's always there's always some focus topic like today, and the idea is in general the focus topic is about 15 to 20 minutes, um, where the speaker is basically presenting some ideas, impulses, insights. There could be questions happening during the presentation that could be or also not. And then at the end of the day, there will be, it's all about us connecting here. There will be basically discussion on those things. So I think that's the idea in general. And then total up to 45 minutes. So usually 45 minutes, that's what we're shooting for. Yeah. So let's see then, and let's really get going. There's a few more people now also have joined, and so welcome again, Deepa. Deepa is located actually now is in California, right on the West Coast. That means it's early morning there. I think 8:35, something like this,
Yeah,
right?
so
And so we have the full day ahead of us here in Berlin. We're more getting ready for basically the evening time. But that's the cool thing with the mindful tech leader community. It's really global. So we have West Coast and then all the way to here to Europe, Asia, Africa. So I think it's really diverse, which is great. And the other cool thing is we have leaders from all type of different industries, but there's always this commonality around tech. And with that said, so Deepa, maybe we do a quick introduction. I know Deepa from many years ago back working in California in Sunnyvale while working there at Yahoo. So this was cool time. But it seems like, I mean, time goes by. It's definitely many years ago. And but we kept in touch, and now with the mindful tech leaders. Last year when I started with this effort, we connected again, and then a few weeks ago, then I asked about any ideas or topics for this meeting, and then Deepa suggested on innovation. I said it's cool. Let's do it. And so Deepa, maybe yeah, share a little bit about yourself so others who don't know yet can get to know you a little bit, and then yeah, we go right into the topic.
thank you, Rainer, and really thankful for the opportunity. When you reached out to me, I was sort of thinking, oh, what might be something that would be interest to everyone. And as I was thinking about it, I said, well, I do have something that is very sort of close to my heart, something that I keep thinking about the whole time. And so I'm just going to talk about that, and we'll see if everybody gets interested in it. And it's nice to hear that, especially Rainer, you said you were interested. I think other people said the same. So that's good to know. So hi everyone. My name is Deepa Paranjpe. I'm here on the West Coast of America. So located in Palo Alto, so heart of Silicon Valley. I'm currently working in Google. Rainer and I overlapped in Yahoo. And so in Google, I've been almost 8 years now. And I am currently a tech lead working on YouTube ads. Um, and the topic I wanted to sort of cover And also, uh, I mean, I will present some insights I have. I don't have a solution as to what that these are the set of actions people can take and create a creative team which can foster creativity. But more importantly, sort of things that I have discovered as a result of my own journey, wanting to be a creative engineer, a creative scientist, and often thinking, is the problem I'm working on really something I am passionate about, and is it really solving solving the sort of the most critical problems right now. And so that's always sort of at the forefront of how I kind of go about figuring out what I want to work on and what others might be interested to. So as part of my introduction, I work in Google. I have like I said, I work in YouTube ads. I've always been sort of more of a scientist than an engineer at heart, even though I feel Google is a very engineering heavy company. I've been able to work on problems that do have a scientific flavor to them, which typically involves I run a bunch of experiments. I try to figure out what solutions exist out there in literature. Is there stuff that can be patented, and sort of like more on the sort of the scientific creative process of solving problems. Um, I like working on YouTube. I think there is there is element of YouTube which is just that it's sort of very heavily adopted by people across the world. You people find it extremely useful, right from watching DIY videos to cooking classes to doing live sessions. And but that's sort of the more of from the consumption point of view. What I find also very cool about YouTube is the fact that it has the whole creator community, people who make a living by being a creator on YouTube, and people who made like small movies and who did not figure out who their publishers would be, sort of figured out a way to put their stuff on YouTube and sort of became real sort of content creators. And I think that part of keeping the content free for users, but at the same time fueling this whole other publishing economy, I find extremely sort of interesting. And the part that the ads play a result of that, where they are sponsoring the content that these smaller creators have created. Now, my area of focus in all of my work has typically been around machine learning, so prediction modeling, and problems that you typically can't solve by just saying, okay, I'm going to use this particular formula and try to solve this, as opposed to being more data driven. So whenever there is a possibility of having data, I always like to think about it. Can I actually learn something from the data, get insights that are sort of not intuitive if I didn't have this data? And so all my focus in the last 8 years has been working on machine learning. Also, the so the the part about the creativity and what I kind of have figured out as being sort of critical for us to solve certain important problems that exist in the advertising ecosystem, or could be pretty much in any ecosystem when where there is monetization done in order to have certain service free for users. This is a very hot topic currently because there has been so much sort of confusion within users after looking at the social dilemma and being kind of afraid of people or sort of tech companies using their data in ways that they don't really understand. So in general, I think there is definitely this sort of a peak point right now where solving some of these problems in terms of trust, like user trust, being able to determine what content is safe for children, for even adults, and what content is good for even monetization, and all those critical problems really require more creative solutions, and that's sort of the hypothesis or sort of a claim I'm going to make. But before I get into that, I just wanted to give a little bit of a background in just trying to understand how the ads ecosystem is. I think people might be generally familiar, but just sort of giving the context here. So in any kind of an ad ecosystem, you'll have a publisher, an advertiser, a creator, and a user. So basically thinking of it as the user is going to consume content which is created by this creator, available on this publisher site, and then you have an advertiser who is in a way sponsoring that content, as a result of which the user really doesn't have to pay for that content. So that's sort of the basic advertising ecosystem that, say, on for the YouTube side, YouTube is the publisher. Any kind of, say, the Daily Show is a creator. You'll have advertisers like Procter and Gamble, some big brand advertisers, and then there are small DR, what we call as advertisers who are more interested in getting some action from the user. And then you have the end user who is actually viewing or being on YouTube. So with that sort of a background of the ecosystem, what are some of the problems that are very well suited for machine learning? Some of them I have worked directly myself, and some of them I've just sort of observed people, scientists, kind of tackling some of the core issues in order to solve the problems. And some of the general problems are, how do you match an ad with a content? This is something that digital advertising uh, sort of has a sort of an edge over, say, TV or newspapers, any other medium, where you actually know what a user is watching, what is the user profile in terms of his interests and so on. And so the idea is, can we show ads which are in a way relevant to the content, and as a result not disruptive, also maybe to some extent useful ads. The other problem that typically can use machine learning is, how much ad load can we even show a particular user? We know from all the data that we have that different users have a different capacity of ad load. Certain users are actually much okay with seeing ads as opposed to certain other users. So this is sort of a very typical prediction problem, sort of an inventory problem of when should we show an ad? Again, so stuff that a medium like TV can't really do. Um, the other sort of a very important problem that has sort of in the last 2 years or so become very critical, especially for YouTube, is whether a video is safe for its users, whether a video is actually monetizable. And the core problem there is, think of a video which likely has hate speech or has something to do with white supremacist agenda or any kind of a very controversial topic. Sort of a brand advertiser like Procter and Gamble would never want to show an ad on such a content. Now, the onus of this sort of match uh, lies on multiple parties, but in a way lies solely on the publisher. And now this particular part is debatable. How much of it should hate speech not be there at all on YouTube, or should YouTube actually continue to be a platform for where free speech is something that is accessible for everyone. So that's definitely sort of like those are the harder problems. But even without that, there is a lot of content which is just fake and which is just unnecessarily made sort of attractive for users to kind of get engaged in, but at the same time really not serving any purpose. uh, and this is the problem that I'm going to take as a case study in showing, if we really wanted to solve this problem, if we said as a tech community, if as a forum of tech leadership, that we really don't want the internet to be an unsafe place for our children, and that's sort of our long-term goal. And if we just said, okay, let's how do we look at it if you're just kind of focusing on a video platform like YouTube. What are some of the things that we should look at? What are some of the things that become really critical for a team to solve this problem? So let's take this problem, which is that given a video on YouTube, we want to figure out if it is safe to be shown an ad on, um, and and say this is the just the open-ended problem we want to solve. As a machine learning person, my usual thinking to go about this is, okay, first of all, I would be needing some label data or some data of videos where I know for a fact that this is safe and some of this is safe and some of this is unsafe. So a sample of videos which are safe and a sample of videos that aren't safe. Once I have this kind of a label data, then I'm going to go around, look for the most state of the art machine learning sort of tool available. And in the past 2 to 3 years, we've worked a lot on deep learning. Deep learning has come up as sort of an end result of being having so much compute power. I remember like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I used to work on a natural language processing where we had a lot of theoretical sort of goodness around neural nets. And it felt so cool to kind of say, oh, yes, we can actually have a machine that is really like a human brain and we can train it. Unfortunately, it was too early at that time because we didn't have the compute power. We would be able to maybe conceptualize such a machine, a neural net, but it would just take so long to train, so difficult for it to consume a lot of data. So as the compute power sort of caught up in the last, I would say, more so like 5 years, um, we were able to really think of deep learning as a concrete practical solution. And for those of you who aren't familiar with deep learning, what deep learning really, the deep part of that learning is from the fact that we use a neural net which has multiple layers, and that's what gets referred to as the depth of your model. And so in a way, if you're thinking of a traditional linear model, and you say, okay, I have a bunch of training data and I have certain features, there is a lot of feature engineering that is required. The machine learning engineer really has to think about, okay, what are the features that are going to really work. In deep learning, on the other hand, the neural net is able to sort of create these hierarchies of features. So instead of the features being human crafted, you can give your neural net, deep neural net, a lot of training data, and the network sort of figures out that at this level, I have this plain set of features from the data. Then I kind of go one step up above that as a means of generalization. And so the more the layers are, the more depth you have to your model. TensorFlow is a great example of something that is built up, which is open source. It's an end-to-end ML platform that pretty much anybody can use. It does require some ML expertise to be able to kind of get started on that. But the point I want to make is that a lot of work has gone into the deep learning already, and a lot of engineers, brilliant minds, have gotten all these tools ready, the machine learning tools. But we still have certain really important problems unsolved, like the coming back to our brand safety problem. And the reason I called it brand safety is that's what we started calling it in Google, because you want YouTube to be brand safe, that brand advertisers are able to actually sponsor the content. So sort of coming back to that problem, I want to be able to classify these videos as safe and unsafe. What we typically do is we will get a random collection of videos. We rate them, sort of have human evaluators come in and label that data, whether it's safe or unsafe. And the way the human evaluators do it is that we provide them with guidelines around how to call something safe or unsafe. If a certain video is contains a certain level of propaganda, or if it is a news which is completely does not measure up with whatever facts that they have. So all these really detailed guidelines are given to the user, to those human raters, and it's obviously an iterative process where at the end of it, your hope is that your label data is really accurate, and then you'll feed the label data to a deep neural net, and you hope for 100% accuracy with your model. And again, I just say hope because we all know that that's kind of that's sort of a goal that usually doesn't get achieved. But the problem with certain of these problems is that there is a very high cost associated with every false negative, that is every video that's unsafe, and it kind of makes it through the classifier as safe, in terms of that getting shown to kids, that getting shown to people at times when they may not be in a mental state to consume it. And there is such a high human cost that obviously a lot of scientists want to think about is like, what is really the difficulty in this problem? Is it the machine learning part? That's what everybody wants to kind of always think. Oh, maybe we need a little bit more compute power. Oh, maybe we need the classifiers to be a lot more stable, that they every day they give the same prediction. And as engineer and as a scientist, I kind of see why people want to go in that direction. Partly because I think that's sort of more tangible, that's more deterministic, like, and that's why we've actually made so much progress on that front. But to this community, I kind of wanted to bring forth that I see this as a problem which is not a technology problem. We have a lot of tools which are really sophisticated when it comes to machine learning. But what is the real problem is that there needs to be a lot more people with very different backgrounds and not just engineering. So there is data generation, there is policy making, there is understanding the human psychology, in order to be able uh, uh, to think about what is making this inherently complex. And this problem, if you think of yourself as a rater when you're evaluating if a video is fake or not, it's inherently complex. So the in my experience, the hardest part has been writing those guidelines for the human raters, being able to clearly uh, tell anybody what is a rule that even a human brain can use. There are so many times when we just look at something and we say, "Oh my God, I don't know what really is this about." Or sometimes people don't even realize that they have gone into some kind of an alternate reality, and they don't even understand that something is fake or not. The the sort of a typical reaction I've seen from tech companies has been, oh, this is incredibly hard, and let's not get into it. And so I actually want to urge the tech community to actually say, no, this is where the problem, in a way, gets interesting, and this is what we really need to solve. And some, I mean, wanted to share this thing like 10 years ago, and so, or even more than that, I think 15 years ago, when I was working in Yahoo on Yahoo question answering. Um, as a machine learning engineer, I thought the biggest insight I got was when I looked at real examples. And I was working on this problem as a student, and I would come up with classifiers and I would do all kinds of really cool stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm not getting that accuracy. The stuff that I learned was the best thing for me to do is to actually sit with examples, go through each and every one of them, and really develop a lot more intuition around what is the problem that I'm really going after. And that's one thing that I have carried with myself in my entire career, is that unless I am able to sort of solve this as a human, how there it's kind of with all the intuition that I have, it's going to be far more challenging. So the insight for the particular problem I was talking about brand safety is, when a very big problem that we were facing is training the raters with guidelines, but at the same time, even looking into how the raters were doing in terms of consistency and their well-being. Imagine having to sit through 8 hours of your day going through videos that are extremely bad in content, extremely jarring and disturbing, and you cannot expect these people to be able to do highly accurate work at the same time sustain and being able to sustain doing this for a long period of time. So imagine a rater getting the expertise, understanding the guidelines, and just burning out in a month and saying, I don't want to look at this anymore. um, and as a result of that, we started to realize that more than the technical problem, what we really needed were language experts, well-being experts, psychology experts, in order to say, okay, we really need to think about the raters' well-being. What are the ways in which we can show this content to raters? Maybe we want to show one bad content or sort of one bad video every 100 videos. We want to space them out. We want to make sure they're getting enough breaks. And very soon I started to realize I am really doing nothing that has anything to do with deep learning, and it's shifted to sort of saying, what is really the main thing that is sort of stopping us from doing that, and let's not kind of get carried away by the part that is interesting, and the part that is sort of technology savvy. So like sort of at the end of uh, like last year, we did achieve a very significantly better accuracy of our models. We were able to actually say to the community that we no longer have this problem as much as we had a few years ago, and this is no way solved. But the key takeaway for me was that we were able to do it only when we said we needed to bring more creativity in this conversation. We needed to say, this isn't really a tech problem. We need to work with our experts from legal. We need to work with our experts from language, psychology, well-being, and together, only then we'll be able to um, solve this problem. And so, as a result of that, um, that was sort of my key insight. And when I started to think of what was the key driver for us to kind of going forward, what we want to do, I think that's sort of my key message to everyone. I kind of want to stop here. see if anybody has any comments, any questions that come up.
Yeah, thanks, Deepa. For I mean, this was first great to have this introduction into the advertising ecosystem, machine learning, all the deep learning, all this good stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people here on in the meeting appreciate also getting all this background. Yeah, I think the maybe I put one comment here. I remember those days back at Yahoo when a friend of mine, Vadim, his name, we were discussing exactly this problem why in the early days of machine learning, so people weren't talking about deep learning, but there was always this idea of, in terms of feature engineering, how can we automate it at some point, right? And what happens if this all gets automated and the machine gets better and better and the algorithms get better and better? Is there even a need for instance, data scientists at this point anymore, right? Because it can, at one point, algorithm can basically learn all those things. Then deep learning came along, and then we were
Yeah.
debating exactly, it's actually going in this direction. But I think the point here is, so I think you mentioned once the term intuition, or a few times the term intuition. And so my question would be here just to clarify a little bit, when you talk about intuition, what do you think intuition is? Is it the same? Is it the same as creativity? Is creativity the result of intuition? And maybe the second question to this would be, do these algorithms currently, clearly they lack intuition, but do they actually need it, right? And is it even, and maybe this is a speculating one, is it even feasible for them eventually, let's say they would need it, could they even get it, right? So I think this is a little bit more far-fetching question, but yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, so the reason I mentioned creativity, even though it feels like such a generic term, what I really want to derive from creativity is the fact that we need original ideas. We need sort of like the basic definition of creativity is that you're going to use your imagination to and original ideas. And you think of creativity more from an artistic sense, in an artistic scenario. And when I was talking about intuition and sort of together with creativity, I think what I want to mainly highlight is that uh, as much as people want to think that you just can train the machine and the machine will sort of go and do its thing, and the humans really can't, like it might even get better than the humans. Um, the real thing, the sort of the truth is that really nobody is able to solve certain of these problems. I mean, let alone machines, but humans and I'm kind of like in the midst of Silicon Valley, really aware of what's coming out in conferences, what's coming out with our companies, content companies, our competitors, and Google, and all the rest. And they are all, in a way, stuck at the problem of how do we make the content safe. So if you just look at that very problem of safety of content, because if you, I mean, I didn't have time to go through all the nuances, but if you just think of the fact that would you say a very conservative news article or a news post on YouTube, is that safe or not, based on what political affiliation you come from as a user? I think a lot of times tech companies have taken a stance that this is none of our business, and we are going to just be the a publisher who's sort of the middleman matching one thing to the other. But I think everybody is clear on that this is really, it is the problem for the tech companies. This it is our responsibility as a tech community to actually take on the problem. And so when I was talking about intuition, I have really come to like sort of uh, is to this thing, sort of like almost as a dead end, that nothing out there is really solving it. And so when people come in, like newer people who are new to technology, they just graduated from college, they want to join in, they get an impression that a lot of stuff is already solved, and I need to kind of just ramp up, know and understand how to use deep learning. And to them, I have always urged that don't go with that mindset. What you really need to bring to the table is your creativity, because what we need is ideas. And even though it might feel like a lot of stuff is solved, it's not. And especially for these problems where there is heavy investment, companies are investing a lot of people are working on them, it is still not moving as fast as one would like it to. And so as an innovator, you're always thinking, what is really the bottleneck, right? So I think that's where I was talking about intuition from a point of view of, I mean, you come with a mindset of I'm going to have to bring my creativity, but how do I go about solving the problem is that I develop intuition. I develop intuition by looking through those problems, or those, like I was saying, like actually sitting through those videos and saying, what would I really call this? Is it safe or not safe? And that's the only way to kind of build intuition.
Very good, thanks. And I think the good news is that intuition can be trained with mindfulness training. It's just amazing to see if you actually go into this area, what can be done. And yeah, I think it's also encouraging to see the importance that this actually has raised the importance of creativity. So
Absolutely.
the worries probably that we had 10 years ago probably don't hold. Nevertheless, let's open it up so for more questions.
Hi, Deepa, this is Vivek. Thank you for sharing. Very interesting and also very close to me. I'm a big time YouTube consumer and also amateur content creator. So I appreciate you sharing some of the insights behind the scene. The question I have, especially with your point about leveraging creativity and not just throwing technology to a problem and expecting it to solve. I have a two-part question. The first part for me is, first, from your point of view, what were the moments that you could share within this group, especially with your work with brand safety, which gave you the impression that the problem is somewhere else? It's not the algorithm, it's somewhere else. So I would love to know those moments. And the second part for me is, how did you work with your peers and your senior leadership to rally on this idea that there is problem somewhere else?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Vivek. And it's good to know that you have a sort of first-hand experience with YouTube being a creator. I think that's sort of like in a way, the most important community as far as YouTube is concerned. So yeah, so early on, as we were sort of going through our journey of monetizing YouTube, for example, a core of our focus was only on relevance. We wanted to make the ads very relevant to the content, and as a result, we thought like that would be a very good way to sort of handle user experience. Like we would have discussions around the fact that this is really our leverage point. Like this is why we would be able to say TV is old school, and YouTube is going to be able to solve this. And very quickly we hit upon this thing. So we were seeing that we were able to do relevance pretty well. We hit upon sort of gray areas where there were questions around, well, even if something was relevant, but not in sort of like the direct correlation way. So think about it as a content which has I'm just going to make a hypothetical example, a content which has questionable sort of characteristics with respect to, like, sort of questionable content with respect to children, and then you show a children-friendly ad. And we started to see examples, more and more examples, where at some level there is relevance, right? I mean, you would say, okay, yeah, both of them are about children, but the correlation isn't a positive correlation. It's the other way around. And more so, it's like the video is just not suitable for any age group. Forget children, but it's just like something that is just beyond question. And we as engineers actually started to see more and more of these examples, and that's why I wanted to mention that looking through examples became such a big deal, because on one side we always have charts, we always have accuracy numbers. You say, oh yeah, my classifier is 92% accurate, and you think, I'm doing such an awesome job, I've earned my pay and I'm going home. But you look at that 8%, and that's what we started doing, and we started to see more of these, where we started to think there is just no way that anything should be even allowed. And so we started, so I work on the advertising side. We started having conversations with the organic, the YouTube side, that should we actually start pulling down videos altogether, like not serve them at all? And that's when the whole free speech idea, sort of free speech conflict in a way comes about, is that, well, in a way, we still have this as an open platform. People can express what they have to, but sponsoring that content is not something that we would ever want to do. And so I think once we knew the gravity of the problem, so even though it is 8%, even though we know it's not the majority of the content, we started to work on that. We built classifiers. We rolled them out. We started to kind of, again, get pretty good accuracy numbers. But we would have examples that were egregious and really sort of bizarre, that our classifiers were able to bring it out. And we got tons of really bad PR. A lot of advertisers pulled out as a result, because like I was saying, that if you're not at 100%, even that one video can kind of bring your whole business down, which is what started to happen. And we would go back, look at the classifiers, and we would say there is really nothing that we haven't looked at. We've tried optimization, we've tried everything that can be tried. What is the problem? As a result, we looked at the human label data, and it's like, aha, a lot of times the raters themselves are confused whether this is good or bad. And it's like we almost were like, leave this machine learning part aside. We're only going to focus on that. And we spent quarters and quarters just kind of refining that, working with the raters very closely. And then in this whole thing, this whole idea of intuition, I think even for the raters, it's extremely difficult to kind of build that intuition around what's good and what's bad. Now think about this also from a geographical context, right? A rater sitting somewhere in the UK may not actually find certain US, like may not understand the fakeness of certain US videos or certain news that comes about in news. So there is a lot of context associated with that, a lot of sort of internal understanding of the world. And so we started to realize that we would really need to go deeper into that part more than anything else.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yep. So I think we're over time, but we can stay a few more minutes if there's more question, I think.
No question, but I think it was very interesting to know your point of view and like how you described the whole journey. Very interesting.
Thank you, Uncle.
Thank you, Deepa.
Good.
Deepa, I have one more question, but I will wait if there is no other questions in the room.
No, go ahead, I think.
Go, Vivek, go.
Often when I read about creativity, a lot is talked about creativity in the midst of providing constraints. It's not like going completely as a wild goose chase, but really putting some interesting constraints around a problem. So from the context of the problem that you talked about, the brand safety, how do you felt, or did you feel any relevance, not in the relevant sense of relevance of an algorithm, but a relevance of constraints playing any role in order for you to think about these alternate ideas of looking at raters and what they're looking at?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I mean you're kind of like covering a point that I may not I kind of missed covering. And yes, I think constraints and in some ways like sort of boundary conditions uh, definitely make it more of a tractable problem. And to me it felt like there were certain things, like in terms of I think somebody else also asked, oh, you asked how I went about convincing the leadership around focusing more on that. I think there definitely are constraints in terms of you would the world be safer if we just removed all bad content and all advertising altogether? And we can sort of start with that extreme, and saying that, well, no, not really. I mean, we won't. The world would become safer for this problem, but but the sort of the danger will go somewhere else. Plus, at the same time, you're also thinking about making money for the creators, being able to sort of make the creator business more sustainable. So I think one big constraint, and especially when we talk to leadership and so on, is that we have to understand that it is still a business, and it is a business model that needs to be worked on within the constraints of what entail to be a business. So that's one side of the constraint. The other side of the constraint is the policy making. So, for example, tech companies usually want to take a stance that we will make sure everything within we conform to everything within the policy. So, for example, in Europe, with GDPR and so on, there is a much stricter guideline with respect to targeting children under certain age and so on, compared to the US, for example. Um, we've had discussions where we looked at the guidelines very clearly for, say, for example, what's there for the US, and really not able to figure out if, as per the policy, would this be a problem or not. And I think even though most of the people in the room would say, no, there are certain things we just want to look at our North Star and say we won't be able to do it. And I'm very proud of Google taking that stance, always sort of going that North Star approach and saying that there are certain things we won't just allow, even though the policies actually don't make me do that. So showing ads to children under a certain age, maybe the policy isn't as clear, but we are going to do that. So from that perspective, I think the policy side does become a constraint. More and more, though, we found that right now there is really a question about, if the policy is extremely loose, do you still really take a stance and say this is really the right thing to do? Which we actually, I'm happy to say that we did several times, that the policy really doesn't ask us to do it, but we're still going to do it because that's the right thing to do. I know competitor companies who don't do that. And I think this does make the ecosystem sort of more dangerous in a way, and also from a user's trust point of view. I think for a user, it's very hard to tell if Google doesn't do it or somebody else does it. They tend to assume that everybody does it, right? I don't know if you watched the Social Dilemma documentary on Netflix. I couldn't watch the whole thing, but I kind of felt like some of it I can get, I understand what's the confusion with the users, but at the same time, a lot of it is in a way avoidable. At the same time, some of it is just blown out of proportion. But at the same time, I think there is a need to have that discussion on what's policy and what's not. So yeah, I think this is an excellent question in terms of constraints. I think I would definitely put those two as the main constraints when we go about solving this.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think we're over time now, and it's time to wrap up. I would say very interesting talk. talk and discussion. So thanks again, Deepa.
Sure, Rainer.
I will make the recording available, so those of us who couldn't look at it have a chance to do later for sure. And I think it's very valuable content for the topics we talked about. So I think hopefully more in our community can take advantage of it. And I think there is a lot of room, I think, for subsequent related topics on this that we can discuss further. So cool stuff.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thanks again.
you.
And then we'll see you next time, 2 weeks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.